River North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today. I just want to acknowledge Minister of Forest for his trip up north. That appreciate the fact that he did come up and see my region, and that I don't necessarily agree with some of the rhetoric about parties, but I am here as an independent and I represent my constituents. And I come from the region where, when it comes to, we produce 38% of the province's hydroelectric power. We produce the most hydroelectric power out of any region in the province. There's ripple effects that when it comes to energy production and the types of energy production that we produce in the province. And that's one of the things that I'd like to bring up when it comes to, when we look at certain projects like this, especially major infrastructure that we look to build with taxpayers' dollars. My region just saw the construction of Site C, and the ripple effects was flooding 7,000 hectares of agricultural land that was very important to our region, and it was a loss that we faced. There are consequences when it comes to building certain things, and we hear talks about clean energy, and nothing is truly clean, especially when we talk about wind turbines and the effects of them. And most people don't think about the turbines themselves and what it takes to make them, to maintain them, what goes into them, the concrete that goes into making them, and the reclamation effort afterwards, whether or not there's planning in place, or whether or not it's going on agricultural land and you're displacing agricultural land, or the displacement of the property values that might be around it when you end up putting items like that on the land. We have Site C, we have Peace Canyon Dam, we have Williston Lake Dam. I wanted to be able to speak about some of the projects and the stability of power and how it's created. Power isn't just power when you flick on your light switch. When you have certain power generation, you have stable power generation, and you can have erratic power generation. Solar and wind are erratic power generation. When it goes into the grid, it is not stable, it is not constant. Certain projects that we have around the province, which is amazing, and we're fortunate to have hydroelectricity, and I'm grateful that our province is so bountiful with those projects. We have to look at projects far to the future of what will provide that constant, stable power generation that can actually power major lines that's being contemplated going to the west. Reliable and constant, stable generation. We need major energy projects, not little inconsistent ones. When Site C came into place, it was already fully taxed and on demand. My colleague across the aisle brought up about the issues that we're facing, and that we have to buy electricity from other provinces or from our largest trading partner to the south, and that whether or not we can rely on these partners for power, especially if we start bringing in, or if those other countries or provinces start bringing in major data centers that consume huge power loads. We have to think about our own grid. So I would highly urge that we look at major power generation that is constant. One example is that if the Minister of Forests, when he comes up, I urge him that it sounds like when they come up for the caucus meeting, I would love to be able to take him up to Fort Nelson. Fort Nelson has an abundance of dry natural gas. It is perfect for power generation. It may not have the condi in it. That's what makes the Montney Basin to the south so rich, that it has the condensate as well as the gas, and is perfect for that transmission of the natural gas going to the coast, and at the same time they get the condensate, that's worth a lot of money. But in Fort Nelson, they've got a lot of nice dry natural gas that we can harvest for cogen facilities that can generate natural, environmentally sustainable, constant power. We need large power generation before we contemplate putting in other big projects. When you look at these power generation, if you use natural gas, it's environmentally friendly when you use these turbines. It can actually have regeneration systems attached to it where you can heat towns alongside them at the same time as generating power for the grid. At the same time, we're looking at electrifying oil and gas facilities that already use natural gas to power these facilities that are very efficient. They use turbines already. They're almost as efficient as electrifying them. I think it's a falsehood to say that we should electrify them and say that it's environmentally friendly, because it isn't efficient to use taxpayer-funded dollars to actually provide or to put in transmission lines to electrify these facilities when they can stay producing environmentally power generated to transmit the product that they're already moving. They're currently in place doing this already. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to strongly oppose Bill 31, the Energy Statutes Amendment Act 2025, a bill that, behind its technical language, represents one of the most concerning expansions of cabinet power over our public utilities and provincial assets in recent memory. At first glance, the bill appears administrative and updates the Hydro and Power Authority Act and the Utility Commissions Act. But when you look closer, it reveals a government that is quietly centralizing control, reducing oversight, and creating conditions for selective economic favoritism without public consultation, debate, or transparency. Part 1 of this bill creates a new framework for North Coast transmission line ownership. It allows the Lieutenant Governor and Council, meaning Cabinet, to designate any agreement between BC Hydro and a First Nation as legally binding and enforceable, even retroactively. Mrs. Speaker, that means Cabinet can take any past or future deal involving our publicly owned transmission lines and make it law after the fact without bringing it before this Legislature, without independent review, and without public disclosure. This government is writing itself a blank check. It's saying we can validate any agreement we want, whenever we want. The British Columbians don't get to question it. That is not reconciliation. That is rule by executive order. We all want reconciliation done right, built on transparency, fairness, and shared prosperity. But when you start handing out ownership of taxpayer-funded infrastructure behind closed doors without accountability, you erode public trust and weaken the very foundation of democratic oversight. The second half of this bill is equally troubling. It gives Cabinet the authority to prohibit, restrict, or regulate electricity use for certain activities, namely cryptocurrency mining, artificial intelligence, data processing, and hydrogen production for export. Now, I understand the need for energy management and sustainability, but this bill doesn't set out a policy that gives the government a mechanism to control who can access power indefinitely and at their own discretion. This is not energy planning. It is economic gatekeeping. Cabinet could decide tomorrow that one data center or crypto operation can operate while another cannot. It could impose punitive rates on a business it disapproves of while rewarding those it favors. It could reshape entire industries through regulation with no accountability and no appeal. Mr. Speaker, when BC Hydro loses revenue because of these political decisions, who makes up the difference? The ratepayer, families, small businesses already struggling under the highest cost of living in the country? This bill allows the Cabinet to pick winners and losers in our economy and then pass the bill to the people. This is part of a growing pattern under this government where the concentration of power replaces the principles and accountability. And we've seen that in previous bills that have passed this House, with Bill 14, 15, Bill 7. It seems a regular trend that bills are taking power further and further out of the House, where this House is meant to have discussions, where we pass bills to bring them into the House, to be able to view them and talk about them, no matter what they're about. We saw it in the Land Act consultations that sought to hand over Crown land authority by regulation. We see again here a slow, methodical transfer of control away from the Legislature and into the hands of the Cabinet and unelected bureaucrats. Bill 31 isn't just about hydro lines or hydrogen exports. It's about who controls the levers of our economy. The people, through their representatives, or small circle of ministers and appointees operating behind closed doors. Mr. Speaker, a more practical approach to energy and governance is simple. I believe in clear laws, transparent processes, an equal treatment under them. I believe in empowering communities, not bureaucracies. And I believe that reconciliation, when done honestly, must include every British Columbian, not just those with access to a cabinet table. Bill 31 fails on all three counts. It opens the doors to selective energy rationing, the quiet privatization of Crown assets, and then retroactive legalization of deals the public never approved. It erases checks and balances that exist to protect citizens, and it does so under the guise of modernization. Mr. Speaker, this bill may be called an Energy Statutes Amendment Act, but what it really amends is the balance of power in British Columbia, tilting it firmly away from the people and into the hands of the executive. And for that reason, the protection of democracy, accountability in this province, I stand firm opposition to Bill 31. Thank you.